Hello. Hello. Ladies and gentlemen, well, we are here again. It's a Friday evening. It's about 8:49 p.m., and we're about to burn the not-so-midnight oil and doing a little bit of bonus broadcasting with me, Frankie Val, over here on the drums, and we are going to do session 4 of the first ever, quite frankly, book club, Windswept House, Malachi Martin, and we're getting through. I think we're just about to hit the halfway point, and this stream, this entire experience, would have been nothing without my good buddy over here, Timothy Gordon, that is joining us tonight. Again, Timothy, how you feeling so far? You good, Tim? You got to unmute.
Yo, Frank.
There he is.
Still have me on mute. How the heck are you, bro? I'm good.
I'm doing great. I'm doing great, and I'm feeling, especially when it comes to this, I'm feeling it. We're getting the pedal is to the metal now, I think, and I'm really excited to see what happens going from here. Your week's been good. How was your reading experience overall? You feeling good about this so far?
Good, yeah. I'm telling you, it's like you said last week, you called it, picked up the pace of it, and still loving it. I mean, I was loving it from the very beginning because I like all the Rome hijinks and the backstory on Vatican II and SSPX and all that, but I'd imagine for the average person out there that just wants action, we really picked up this week.
Yes, and I think that is the way that I would characterize this grouping of chapters from 30 to no, it was from 26 to 30. We ended on page 321 if you have the paperback, but that's how I would characterize this. It is a full court press. They had already set up their councils. They had their plan. They agreed upon exactly what their goals are, and now it is just tying up loose ends, making sure that they get this thing underway. And I'd like to just jump into some notes that I have. Then we'll get into notes that you have, and then we'll get into our thread. And obviously along the way, we just have a lot of tangential but relative conversation, which I really love. It starts off with this chapter of Mice and Men. Christian is now in Rome, and I'm still wondering why. I guess he's still wondering why he's there. And every time that he's in the same room as Father Slattery, I just have to say, it is awesome.
Yeah.
Every scene with Damien Slattery is awesome. And let me just ask, who is Damien Slattery based on in the character key? Is he supposed to be somebody in particular, or did Malachi Martin write himself in as a character? Because I was wondering that.
Yeah, he's supposed to be the actual rector of the Ange from the, I think he was the early 80s. I'll get you a name in 1 second, Frank. I'll get you a name in 1 second. Probably the name won't make too much of a difference to too many, but yes, this character key, which I have up, is... Does this take me off if I do this? Can you still see me?
No, I don't see you, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, okay, let me get that thing for you. So Damien Slattery is, call him in real life, because again the Ange and the Greg are hit very close to home for me, and I know some of the lore told by priests attending those places. Yeah, so I'm on page 2 here. Damien Slattery is a composite of Michael Cardinal Brown and a living former U.S. Dominican, perhaps Father Fiore. I thought it was a famous Washington, D.C. Dominican named Father White, famous Thomist, based Aristo Thomist, named Father White. That's who I thought the other guy was. But at the very least, Michael Cardinal Brown, mixed with a former living U.S. Dominican. So he's not actually Irish the way the book makes him out to be.
Got you. Well, in this, but like I said, anytime that he's in a scene, it's just awesome. I have this one thing. I have two pages that I want to point out in particular. Page 263, you have Christian is in Rome. He's sitting down with Damian Slattery, and he's kind of, like I said, he doesn't understand why he's there just yet. And when he offers up the idea that he was thinking that since the Vatican Bank, the IRA, is in a little bit of trouble again, he was thinking perhaps they're just, the Pope is tapping him on the shoulder because it would win some favor with Ceci and they need the money. And immediately, this is what happens. No sooner had Christian shared that idea with Slattery than the Master General surged out of his chair, his face irate and beet red. He went nose to nose over Gladstone, making him a prisoner in his chair. Can you really think that, Father? We are in a war with Satan himself. Maybe that war has already been won for us, but right now we have lost. We are losing and will continue to lose battle after battle. And you think the Holy Father has nothing better to do than buttonhole you about money like some halfpenny politician running for dog catcher? Well, think again. Perhaps you're too young to know what's going on, but you're not too young to learn what's going on. It's far more complicated than you have any idea, far more hellish, far more divine, far more hazardous than you could begin to imagine. I was like, oh, God. I was trying to put myself in the chair as Christian, having this guy bearing down on me and putting it that straight. And I was like, oh, damn. Okay. Yeah, no.
Remember, he's a 7-footer in the book. He's 7 full feet tall. And, he's the physical specimen. I thought the exact same thing as I read that part.
It's just awesome. Just awesome. On the second half, in the second page from that's the 264. Where was it in particular? Oh, here you go. He stepped away from Gladstone and moved toward the window. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, but all the more riveting for that. Quote, in the warfare that is going on, there are quite a few of us on the side of the angels, but we are not that many compared to the mass of camp followers trotting merrily along the coattails of those out to destroy what we are trying to salvage. And as we know from not only previous portions of this book, but from how we analyze and lay down commentary of our own contemporary culture, those trotting along and hanging on to the coattails of those meaning to destroy are not always wittingly going along with it. They just have absolutely no base. They have been debased for a complete purpose, that when they are initiated into this plot, they won't know what they're doing and who they're serving, but they are serving a purpose as a very useful pawn, and there are many pawns out there. Let's see. Okay, so Paul Gladstone. Now, that's Christian. He's in Rome now. Paul Gladstone, on the other hand, he's in Jerusalem. And we check in with him in this chapter as he is traveling with Cyrus Benthok and Dr. Channing, and this is pretty much his initiation into Freemasonry. And it's pretty incredible because you get these little hints of grooming prior to his accepting this new spiritual ordination. He walked out before he was ordained before, but he was definitely ordained this time. Listen to this little part here that made my hair stand up. 271. He's being groomed. So Paul was not astounded to find himself next with these two companions at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Now, this right here, that there at the spot where the body of Christ had been placed in its tomb after the crucifixion, Paul was moved by the sadness in Dr. Channing's voice as he remarked on the partisan animosity that so obviously held sway among the different Christian denominations charged with the care of the Holy Sepulchre. Quote, is it not an unworthy spectacle, Mr. Gladstone? Even here, Roman Catholics, Franciscans, Eastern Orthodox priests, Coptic prelates, and all the others vie to be the most important custodians. And then comes in Benthok, who is also in on the grooming. Shameful, he says. It really is time we all get together. You know, it's like, and you just, it's so skeevy. this little 2-on-1. It's so creepy, but that's how you groom someone. These completely scripted exchanges that set you up to only take one side in an argument, and then, of course, comes the final seduction, as he says. So, did you pick up on that?
Oh yeah, man. We were fun. It was funny. We were over by the St. Thomas Catholic Church yesterday in town. We live a little outside of Hattiesburg, and we passed the Masonic Temple, and they never have windows, right? And my 11-year-old daughter, she knows about the Masons through me. She was asking why don't they have windows and all that, and I was just thinking, it's real life creepy stuff. It's real life Scooby-Doo. So yeah, remember the what they're doing there at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is supposed to, in essence, we were talking last time, Frank, you and me, about that Australian guy who did a tell-all on the Masons and what they were. He said, have you ever noticed in movies, they say the name of the Lord, they'll say JC or G-D, and they'll use it excessively, way more than they'll say fuck or shit or whatever. And it's because it's a curse word to them. So you have to remember to these guys like Benthok and particularly Channing, these guys are pretending, like you said, it's so skeevy because they're pretending. It is grooming. It's how it works. It's how plants work. Even if you go to a timeshare weekend and they're trying to get you to buy, it's so skeevy because they're attempting to give Paul the impression, who left the church because he was so disgusted with the ecumenism, the religious indifferentism after the council, to give him the impression that they actually cared about the fact that it's shameful that the different Christian denominations are vying for the control of this church, which isn't really that surprising anyway, human nature being somewhat petty, but that's not really that sleazy. So these people for whom the name of Christ, the holy name of Christ, is a swear word, are pretending that they think it's beneath Christians to take a little bit of pride and want to be the primary custodians of the Holy Church of the Sepulchre. It's really palpable sleaziness.
Yes, and you know what I started thinking around page 273. This is when they really start getting around to the crux of what they're doing out there in Jerusalem. He says, let's see here, Gladstone listened carefully. Though he noted a number of gaps and omissions in Benthok's account of his vision, he was pleased that Christian was apparently so much more attuned than he had imagined to globalizing trend of world affairs. Still, Paul had his doubts that the foreign ministers of the EC, the EU, nations had a high opinion of him as Secretary General was one thing, but it didn't seem likely that such powerful men would lightly render such favors as Benthok had outlined to a newcomer such as himself. Like, why me? At least not on such a regular basis as this conversation implied, and above all, not for the benefit of Rome. Such doors did not just open like that willy-nilly. With his clear statement of those objections, Paul Gladstone opened the door willy-nilly to his own final seduction. Because, of course, why me? And then they tell him why. They put it on there. And I'll tell you, the only thing I can think about over the next couple of paragraphs was the scene in Revenge of the Sith, Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. It's when Anakin and Palpatine go to the opera, which I think is one of the most amazing scenes in all of Star Wars, all the movies that were ever made. It is creepy. It is so well done. It is, my hair stands up the whole time. And Ian McDiarmid, who plays Palpatine, he's sitting there and he finally has some alone time with Anakin, who he wants to make his apprentice, who he wants to turn. He needs to turn him to the dark side for this to really get off on the right foot. And he starts telling him the legend, the fable, the story of Darth Plagueis the Wise. And you have to go and rewatch that scene because it's exactly what's going on here. It's verbatim. He says, "Are you aware, Paul, that many high-ranking prelates in the Vatican belong to the Lodge? And Paul took a moment to reply, yes, but there is still some official dissatisfaction as regards to Freemasonry. And that's when Dr. Channing comes in. He was quick to reply, the only important source of dissatisfaction that remains is the present Holy Father. You know, it's only that outdated Pope that nobody actually really likes. And then so his guard continues to be chipped away. And then finally he gives himself over to it, and he is just, I don't know, there is just a sense of joy, like a high, a euphoria that rushes through him, that he believes that he's finally found that point of convergence for all faith that he was missing his whole life. And it's kind of sad. It makes me wonder at that point, have we lost the everyman Paul at this point? Has he become now ideologically and spiritually invested, whereas before he was just an old Catholic boy that has lost his way through all the reasons that we said in session 3? So have we lost Paul's spirit at this point? I don't know. There's definitely a lot more coming, but what do you think?
Yeah, I love the Darth Plagueis the Wise reference here. I'd love to hear you build that out a little more, because that's one of my very favorite scenes in all of the. I'm a prequels fan, Frank.
Me too.
So Gen Xers shit on the prequels, and I think it's about as boomer as a Gen Xer can get to shit on the prequels. Is like, give me 3/4, episode 3/4 any day of the week, right? Mm. So I'd like to hear you build that out 30 seconds more, if you wouldn't mind. But what I was going to point out about the same scene with Paul in Jerusalem, which is a funny expression, Paul in Jerusalem, like the Council of Jerusalem. In 10 pages before, in the previous scene, you had Brother Christian in Rome, Paul in Jerusalem, and Christian in Rome. I wonder if there's something to that. But it's perfect parody. It's almost like Godfather 2. Because what does Christian keep saying when he meets with Mastroianni? He's like, why me? Why me? I'm just a newcomer. No one's going to share with me. And what does Mastroianni say to him? He goes, no, now you're one of us. You're like you're like family. Almost the exact same response that not Chapman, but the Channing gives to Paul, where he's like, no, you're like family. Or Benthok and Channing together tell him this, and Paul is saying the same shit. Why me? Why am I entitled to secrets of state that are so closely held?
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
What did you mean with the so of course Darth Plagueis the Wise? It's excellent. You have an excellent eye for this stuff. Darth Plagueis the Wise. That's Sidious without a third interlocutor grooming Anakin, because he knows that Anakin has this ulterior motive to be obsessed with death. So he's just grooming him with this lie, like openly admitting that he was the apprentice of Darth Sidious the Wise, and he's
it's more it's even more than that. It's even more than that. And I know that when people say, there's a lot of people that just they don't like the movies, they don't like Star Wars, then whatever, but. I'm a huge prequels fan too, especially when I started realizing what you're really talking about there. The Emperor, who is the source of all evil, he has been able to cloak himself inside of this magnanimous character, philanthropy, being on the side of the little man, talking about democracy, this and that. But all along the way, his stock keeps rising in the Senate. Then finally, he's the chancellor. Then finally, he is able to start a war. He's on both sides of the war. Yeah. And that war has been made to erode all types of democratic traditions inside of the Galactic Senate. He seizes war powers for himself. He builds a grand army. He is completely screwing with and destroying the Jedi Order, which are guardians of peace, and they're pretty much like the church, I would have to say. If you want, we're going to make some kind of a comparison in this position, but he needs something else. He sees in Anakin, of course, something that is necessary. He's going to be he's going to be more powerful than anybody, and if he can have that, He's already built a poison pill into this grand army, the Republic, with the Order 66. He knows when the time is right, he's going to turn the clone army on the Jedi, on everybody, and take everything over in one fell swoop. And, of course, just blame people, stop the war altogether. We have vanquished the enemies. They're no longer necessary anymore. He got rid of Dooku. Every last one of his puppets are completely washed away at the end as patsies. And of course, he gets all the acclaim, but he needs this apprentice. He needs the power, because Anakin alone could probably take him down eventually. So he starts grooming him. He keeps his anger. He keeps all of his lamentations alive. His missing of his mother, the worrying of whether or not he's going to be able to save his wife Padme from death, even though he is the source of all of his nightmares. So this is the thing here. He goes and he sits down. He beckons Anakin, who has now been told to spy on him. He knows that He's wedging him between, let's say Paul here is Anakin Skywalker. They found a way, the Emperor did, Palpatine, the Dark Force character here, has found a way to put a wedge between Anakin and the Jedi Council, Paul and the Church, to make him go away, to look into darker aspects that he thinks he can get a more complete understanding of the world at large and what it's really supposed to be about. And of course, it's all just the allure doing it for the fact that he thinks he can prevent those around him from dying. So he sits down with Palpatine at this opera, and it's very odd. It's almost like a space Cirque du Soleil, and it's just wonderful music at this point. Everything's very creepy. It's just the two of them, and he tells him the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise, who was Palpatine's master, that he ended up learning everything he can and killing in his sleep. And at the end, he talks about he became so powerful that he thought that he would be able to stop people from dying. And, of course, he knows that this is what Anakin wants to hear. And Anakin goes, is it possible to learn this power? And then at the end, the end of the scene is Palpatine looks over to Anakin and goes, not from a Jedi. Oh, man. Yeah. But he's the restraint, taking little chips out of him. He wasn't going to go for him full bore right there. And that's what I'm saying, that all this, Paul Gladstone has been chipped away at. His soul has been chipped away at, like Anakin Skywalker. It's incredible.
Yeah, that's excellent, man. That's a good eye. That's a good eye. I like that a lot.
Well, let's keep going then. I have a little bit more here that I want to see if there's anything different that you have caught. On page 289 now. Oh, well, in 274 and 279, I found two instances I thought was pretty interesting. Not only do the Freemasons that have just inducted and initiated Paul talk about we need to build a new Jerusalem, but also you have the Pope himself talking about the idea of building a new Jerusalem and a new mystical body of Christ. I guess rebuilding the church that he knows is now dead. That something needs to be rebuilt. So you have both opposing forces talking about this idea of building the new Jerusalem. That made me think about Albert Pike and those theoried letters about the 3 world wars and the New Jerusalem and how they were going to destroy everybody in the end. And then we have page 289, Appleyard. We are looking at him through going through the Pope here in 289. He's looking through the Pope's stuff. He is looking through everything that he can to learn about him. And this is interesting of him because of all of his findings, Appleyard, we learn, is a 30th degree Mason. He seems to be taking a little bit more of an observational stance on everything, though. He obviously does not care for the papacy, nor does he care for the predominance of the Christian faith in the world at all. But he seems to be a little bit more, at least at this point, a little bit more detached of all the globalist types thus far. And he's confused to that point. Here, 289. The trouble that there was, the trouble that there was also contradictions involved with the Pope that baffled Gibb, Appleyard. He found documented evidence, for example, that the Slavic Pope saw all religions as true avenues to spiritual salvation, even such things as African voodoo, Papuan animism, and the millenarianism of Jehovah's Witnesses were included in the Pope's ministry, but the practical point for the American was that the pontiff showed none of the usual insistence that all men and women become Roman Catholics. Then he goes on 290. He goes even more into depth. Pretty obviously, this is Malachi Martin reaffirming all of his problems with John Paul II and the things that he has done. It was supremely
out of the mouth of Christian.
Yeah.
Remember, Christian, the first 100 pages in a couple different discussions, he expresses dissatisfaction with this ecumenism, religious indifferentism of John Paul II, and he kind of dials that back. Sorry, I didn't mean to break in.
No. I'm glad that you did, because in 290 he goes even more. He says it was supremely important for Appleyard as a man and as a Mason to find what appeared to be a kindred attitude in the writings of the Slavic Pope. There was a dimension to this man that clicked in Appleyard's mind like tumblers in a lock, a purity of outlook and a dedication of purpose he had found in no other world leader. What was surprising was that as it was appealing for a man as idealistic as Appleyard was this Pope's consistent professional care, not only for geopolitical strategy, but for the strategic necessities of life. This pontiff concerned himself with everything, with wantonness of agricultural policies, with the responsibilities and values of democratic society, with scientific irresponsibility, water rights, labor unions, housing, medical care, genetics, astrophysics, athletics, opera. The sheer impact with which his words were tailored to suit the cultures of over 80 nations was something to admire. So he goes on, and then he says this, still, he couldn't help but wonder, Appleyard couldn't help but wonder how the prelates, how the prelates he had met could fail to realize what a giant of a leader they had in the Slavic Pope. So here he is in his reading through and just thumbing through the Pope's profile, his body of work and everything, and they're saying, and he's asking himself, as a Mason, as a 30th degree Mason, he has no reason to stand in the corner of the Pope. But he's saying, why is it that they are so feverish in taking this man out when it's obvious that if they were a little bit more moderate, they have a great asset in him. He is obviously very progressive. So I thought that was very interesting, because everybody else is in a race against time, because he probably doesn't know about the race against whatever kind of juju they had won themselves with the enthronement that they said they're running out of time, 5 to 7 years. So he probably doesn't know about that clock is ticking, because, yeah.
You know, everybody, I was on Twitter correcting some folks about progressive Teddy Roosevelt. I'm not a Teddy Roosevelt fan, and Lincoln. The two presidents, Lincoln and Roosevelt, are kind of the equivalent in the big secular world of the pontificate of JP2, Frank, insofar as the left claims them, the right claims them, and it's because both Lincoln and Teddy Roosevelt, like JP2, did a little bit of leftist orthodoxy and a little bit of leftist heterodoxy, a little bit of right-wing orthodoxy and a little bit of right-wing heterodoxy. And so no one, at least in my corner of the church, right, the trads, but I hang out with a bunch of Ceci Gladstones and her sons, or, not necessarily rich, but the trads, people that are either SSPX sympathetic or SSPX adjacent. And, no one in my corner of the church knows what to make of John Paul II. Okay. So I want people to know that non-Catholics that are reading this to understand, he did this thing, and it's called the CC2 in 1986, where he kissed the Quran. Everyone's like, what the fuck? Like, why would this ever be done? He is a progressive. JP2, unlike Ratzinger, who became Benedict XVI, was a big reader of Karl Rahner, one of the major theological progressives inside the church in the 40s, 50s, 60s. Unlike Ratzinger, who became Benedict XVI, he never came off of his enthusiasms for Karl Rahner's writings. Similarly, he referred to the Second Vatican Council, the 21st Ecumenical Council in the Church, regularly as the Second Pentecost. Wait, the Pentecost is when the Holy Spirit came to the apostles and turned them into bishops, and it's known as the birthday of the Church. So the Second Vatican Council is the second birthday of the Church. That's weird. Yeah. It's almost like Catholic millenarianism. But on the other hand, he hated communism. He seems to have hated it viscerally. On the other hand, he did grant some real boons to the traditionalists to allow the Latin Mass to sort of continue on. On the other hand, he did censure a lot of the far left liberals, like Cardinal Casper, who's one of these characters in here. Stopped him from doing what they ended up getting 30 years later under Pope Francis. So he's just a mystery wrapped in a riddle. So the first 200 pages of this book, Frank, I was saying to myself and some of my trad friends, I was like, dude, you need to go read Windswept House. Actually, a buddy of mine that attends an SSPX chapel. I was like, yeah, I mean, Malachi Martin was in the know, and he seems to be defending John Paul II insofar as he's having Christian Gladstone, the very humble, very wise, young and wise protagonist, rebuffing himself, repudiating his former harshness of JP2. And this is Malachi Martin, who knew better, because he was a kind of behind-the-scenes guy at the Vatican. On the other hand, the last 50 or 100 pages, now he's kind of doing the he was sort of rehabilitating the reputation from a trad point of view of JP2, the Slavic Pope. And the last 50 or 100 pages, he's been kind of going the opposite way. Now he's saying, no, look at this Mason. This Mason is like, hey, I like this guy. I relate to this guy.
Yeah. Yeah. And once again, I think that may just be, I think out of all the things you can say about that, it's probably another really wonderful tip of the cap to Malachi Martin as an author, as far as being authentic and being fair to the characters instead of projecting onto all of them constantly, and just being, coming at it from one side of a view, that presenting that there is a much larger, much more complex situation going on here.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Let's see here. Around page 292, this is where other things go on. We have the American side of things with Cardinal of Century City. This is the Cardinal from Chicago, you were saying.
Bernardin, yeah.
Okay, well, yeah. He's holding up his end. This is pretty much what we're getting. He's holding up his end of the bargain by sowing distrust and widening the schism between the Pope and the bishops and the rest of the church. He is talking about how they're bringing in all these progressive women and the Wicca, the witchcraft, the practicing sisters and things like that, how he's really just holding up the American end of things. And then that chapter ends with the bishop, the Cardinal of Century City, getting a call from a so-called guardian, as they call him, to say, hey, listen, the police officer who handled the Scalabrini execution may be ready to turn. So obviously that's another loose end that needs to be tied up. So he has to go and kill the police officer that was forced into early retirement. Now, part two, that's when we go into part two now. It's called Roman Service. Part two of the book, man, this just pops off quick. It's around page 299, starts off with a bang. It just jumps around from everybody what they're doing, getting their ducks in a row. Appleyard is getting ready to get a visit with the Pope on the books. He's going to go sit down with him face to face. Something really interesting is said as they're in the opening segment. Where the hell is it? 299. He says, let's see, Appleyard managed to glean, here it is. Appleyard managed to glean even a meager sense of consistent papal policy should have given him the advantage over every other geopolitical strategist in Washington and around the world, and not to mention every expert in the Vatican as well. And yet perhaps his main advantage was that he understood that it was evening time for the Roman papacy, just as surely it was evening for the NATO alliance, for the European community, and for the Anglo-American establishment, for the USA world hegemony, and for the Marxist socialist utopian dreamers of this almost spent 20th century. A long, tedious, agonizing day was drawing to a close over the heads of the nations now. The clear, reliable perspective of daytime was yielding to twilight. Accurate perception, even for the most familiar objects, was being difficult. Fears of dissolution, awareness of mortal enemies as yet unidentified, ignorance of the near future, growing discomfort with the present conditions now began to rustle and rise free from the darkening byways of the nations. That opens up there saying he's going to go sit down with the Pope, but he has an advantage that most people around the world doesn't. And he knows that it is the end of everything soon. It is not just the end of this, the plaything that is the European Union, that is American leadership in the world, economic, the papacy, and even the socialist Marxist utopian dreamers, the right and the left. This also made me think about Albert Pike, where it said that the final cataclysm was going to be a war that is not only brought down on the heads of the faithful, but of the atheists as well. It destroys Christianity. They want to destroy Christianity. They want to destroy Islam, Judaism, and the atheists. Everybody, because it's about bringing in the doctrine of Lucifer when all is said and done, and that atheism, the Marxists that really led that brigade, is one of the biggest tools for flattening out all of your competition. Those who think that there is nothing behind all this, and there's no strings attached. And I thought that was really interesting right there. He's not talking about just the evening that is coming down on the papacy. It's coming down on everybody.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. It's also on the same page, in the same scene of the book, we find out that Ariatini, who is Silvestrini in real life, a cardinal I know a great deal about, one of the Sankt Gallen leaders, he is beginning to suspect goodly Father Carnesecca, which means that Carnesecca is probably going to eventually find himself in some danger. Mm-hmm. I was going to look up. I forget who Carnesecca is in real life, but the sort of the beginning of a new thread here in this chapter.
Oh, it's big.
The ferreting out, of the good priests. Yeah.
Or it's not. Yeah, it just jumps around all of these segments after the start of chapter 28. You've got Appleyard. He's preparing to go to Rome. Then it jumps to Cardinal Mastroianni, who's looking to tie up loose ends on his end, arranging to get rid of Father Slattery. So they want Damian Slattery out of as the head of the Dominicans. They want him out, and who knows if that means he's just going to be banished to some remote part of the world, or if they're eventually going to clip him. And then it even starts getting set up with the it seems like they're setting up an assassination of Father Aldo Carnesecca, as you say, out of fear, as they say, out of fear that he may have been exposed to some of the documentation of the enthronement of Lucifer back in 1963. Mastroianni and Oriatini, they're talking about that, how when they were preparing all of the documentation for the September Pope, as I guess they're referring to John Paul II, after they had the two quick deaths of those popes, they thought that Carnesecca had probably seen some documentation about the enthronement, so he started setting up the cardinal on a mission here. No, Aldo's not a cardinal. No. So they're starting to set up Father Aldo on a mission here to denounce the mafia, which you know where this is going. So you can just imagine that they're trying to set him up for what will look like a hit because he is meddling in forces, whatever. I think it was Orientini or Mastriani who says they wish that Cardinal Vincennes could have been around for this day. That was one of the guys in the opening there. What else do I have? That's it. Also, then it jumps to Christian. He's already going all over Europe, talking to bishops about unity. He's getting nothing but sour tones concerning the Pope. And then page 306 is an example of government-civil strife, if you want to know. Christian is on the fence as to whether or not he could be possibly... He's possibly how the Pope could be surrounded by people who want him to fail. And then once again, a great scene with Damian Slattery, who says, you really think that if these people were focused on solutions, things would be in such a bad shape? It's the same thing with every government around the world. They need problems, and they're probably the ones behind it. And then the last thing from this whole section is Ceci is in Rome. And she is offering a loan to the Vatican Bank, which is in trouble once again, and she pulls a little bit of a trick out of her bag at the last second, holding off on a signature on the loan until she can get a promise to meet with the Pope. So that's what we're left off with here. That's just my notes. You have Ceci in Rome. Everybody's in Rome. You have the Gladstone brothers that are it's going to be even more high tension when they meet each other once they realize what's become of Paul and how Christian is starting to put together all of the pieces as to what he's being used for. Damian Slattery being a huge part in that. Ceci, who knows what she's going to do when she meets with the Pope. I'm really interested to hear about this meeting between Appleyard and the Pope. So that's what I've got. What do you have?
Actually, that's I've noted through all 4 meetings, you're always on the same pages I'm on. And a lot of times it's the same exact quote. And other times it's just a paragraph near you. Can we go back a little bit?
Sure.
Frank, I'd like to point out a couple things because I was doing a little bit of...
Well, your audio got really low for a second there.
Okay, is that better?
Oh, beautiful. There you go.
Is that better? Yeah, okay. There are a couple points from way earlier on that I just felt like that I should address. That I was catching up on reading from last week even. When let's see, on page 197, sorry to bring you guys way back there.
It's okay.
This is some important stuff. Stupefied at such total lack of discipline, right at the top of the page there. The rector had tried to give Gladstone a dose of his own tough medicine. This is when Paul was in, because I want to talk about, I don't think we can overstate the etiology. Doctors call it the etiology, the first cause of a sickness, right? The etiology of Paul Gladstone. He literally and sincerely left the seminary. Now that we know he's basically a Mason, a low-level Mason, playing with high-level Masons, he sincerely left the seminary, little brother to a big brother who's, living saint, for good reasons, because of what's gone on with the council and the funniness and the liturgical and the theological innovations. That's a term of art for trad Catholics. So he's talking to his rector, and he's saying this: look, if I remain, I'll come out. This is on 196. If I remain, I'll come out a disheveled dispenser of useless trinkets in the great American Roman Catholic potluck. I like that turn of expression. Astonished almost into speechlessness at such unprecedented rebellion, the rector managed to say a few standard words in defense of the mandates of Vatican Council II, and to utter what Paul could only regard as a laughable appeal to obedience. What makes it a laughable appeal to obedience is the fact that the church is currently, by such liberals, progressives, being democratized. These guys don't believe in obedience. They don't believe in pyramidal hierarchies. He said simply, I don't know how to be a priest. Paul had countered with an iciness that froze the very atmosphere of the room. I don't even know what it means to be a priest in a church where the centerpiece is nothing more than a supper table. Oh, I know. I've heard over and again how this new conciliar church of yours, that's the adjectival form of council, conciliar church of yours, will present a more human face to the world. But I tell you this, I will not preach to the people of God that when they gather together, they will not only become church, but themselves form Christ. I don't begin to understand such meaningless jargon. And then that's when I was decontextualizing it. Stupefied at the top of 197 at the lack of such total lack of discipline. The rector had tried to give Gladstone a dose of his own tough medicine. Paul was putting his entire priestly career in jeopardy, and the rector had warned, by this unbridled and uncalled for outburst. Have I not made myself plain, Father Rector? Paul was already on his way out the door. I would rather be a decent Catholic layman cooperating with the church than a ragtag member of this tasteless, irreligious pigsty. I mean, I like Paul. I can't. So, like, whatever happens to him, I like him. This guy sounds like me. You know, I mean, this is how I feel. He's not bullshitting. He's not putting on airs. Paul leaves the priest. He was never a priest. He can't leave the priesthood, but he leaves the seminary for the most authentic reasons because of what was going on there. So the fact that he's fallen this far to becoming, the arch nemesis of the church, a Mason, it's our author, Malachi Martin, now that we know what happens 150 pages later, giving us a little bit of Dostoevskian social sin, right? Of course, this is Paul too. This is his fault that he's fallen so far. He could do like his big brother and just strive to be better within a church that's destroying itself. So that part of that's on the man, that's private sin. But part of it's this kind of Dostoevskian Brothers Karamazov public sin thing. Even Alyosha, the saintly brother, is partly responsible for the death of the father, not just the three really bad brothers. So I think when you look at thematically what Malachi Martin is doing here, it's really clever. It's not exculpating Paul altogether by saying, oh, well, hey, man, the Second Vatican Council, or at least the so-called spirit of the Second Vatican Council, which is what happened in the 70s after the council closed in the 60s, it's just, shit-fucked everything. It's not just that. It's we all have personal accountability for the conspiracy of our lives, for in this fallen world, for making good. And that, to me, that page, when I went back and I was reviewing my notes from last time, that explained more about Paul Gladstone than any, I think, other single page. Actually, 195 is really good too, but does some of that. They're talking about Guttmacher, remember, who's a friend not only to Christian but also to Paul and also to Ceci, and they tell us about Christian too when we think of the coming confrontation, probably around page 400 of Paul and Christian. There's some parody, and it's not only arduously labored at by the author in the places we pointed out in this reading, but the parody is, if you look at page 194, Guttmacher is talking about Christian's not a goody two-shoes. It's not just Paul that got into boyish mischief. They both have this mischievous turn that they probably get from their mother, and thereby they're kind of brought closer together. So I don't think we're supposed to think of Paul and Christian as strict foils in the classical sense of the literary term. I think we're supposed to think of them of a piece as much as we can. They're making individual decisions that are separating them.
Yes, I think that it was really great of you to go back to that and bring that to the fore when it comes to Paul's character arc, because it really is like, it's one of those things with modern day movies where they want you to sympathize with a bad guy for some reason. Well, there's a difference between making the bad guy in the story, or somebody who's doing something evil, a little bit more attractive, and just very, very plainly show how somebody's choices and how things that are done and how the dominoes can fall that lead people to different places in life. Not necessarily to condone the action of giving oneself, pledging one's loyalties over to the Freemasons, but starting in the seminary to be so shaken at what you're seeing, and like you said, to rightly leave for all the right reasons. That was my assessment, and I think many people shared that assessment in that session when we did that section. It was the representation of the everyman. Not all of us, not many of us are in the seminaries these days, but we have had these little barbs and spears put through our soul along the way, that we've seen things come out of the church. We've just seen all these practices and all these scandals, and it really pulls a person away and says, you know what the hell am I holding myself to? This is supposed to be This is supposed to be the mystical body of Christ, and this is how it acts, and this is the kind of immunity it has from some of the worst humanitarian crises that we're seeing right now. So that right there does a number to the average person that doesn't have any kind of spiritual, really strong, solid spiritual guidance. It doesn't have the Father Guttmachers in their lives, the Sessies as parents. We just kind of drift, and some of us become Paul Gladstones. And I think that, like you said, we got a couple hundred pages to go, so much can happen. But let's get into the thread now from people out there in the audience. The first one is from Ghost of Schwartz. Ghost of Schwartz says, page 294, paragraph 4, quote, "The point I make is this. We don't announce anything as new or innovative. We just go ahead and do what we will. We didn't tell the people we were going to change, but we just went ahead and did it. The people fell into line like obedient dominoes," end quote. This segment stood out to me. I remember pre-election 2020, you said over and over that they were just going to act as if they won the election. I have watched the media and DC act as if ever since, with everything from the election to COVID to Ukraine. Yeah, it's the one big LARP. Interesting to see in this relation to the church as well. I guess they are all using the same playbook. This book has gotten me back to reading an actual book rather than the online BS that is being perpetrated on us daily. Starting reading on the beach in Emerald Isle, North Carolina, and now spent about 30 to 45 minutes in the mornings on the back deck next to my fountain with the birds chirping and the sun rising. It has brought me great joy. I really hope you continue with this. Another page turner. Thanks for all that you do. Well, that's wonderful. That's great. And yes, hey, there have been people. I know that there's a lot of old timers out there that have been screaming since the Kennedy assassination and even before that something's wrong. The media has a part in it. We're all going towards some really hellish places, and Malachi Martin was definitely one of them. That's for sure. And we're getting this. It's almost like a message in a bottle, Tim.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, it's really. I really like that guy's message. I mean, there's something. I think I said this the first night we were talking. It is like a message in a bottle. It's almost like reading the first 100 pages of Fellowship of the Ring, where you're comfortable on your couch in front of either a fire, if it's probably winter, fire and a cup of tea, or on your back porch and it's beautiful with the birds chirping, 6 months later. But either way, you're comfortable, you're happy, you're healthy, and you're reading about this really, really creepy, darkling situation that ought to be upsetting, but because you're so comparatively safe, it's just fun. So I think that's the thing about this, is that we know, we in the church who understand who Malachi Martin is, Undersecretary to Augustine Cardinal Bea, and personal friend to the good Pope. Remember, he was a personal friend, Malachi Martin, to the good Pope John, who convened Vatican II. That it's like, oh wow, he's telling 90 to 95% truths here, and he's not telling us exactly what's the truth and what exactly is the 5 or 10% fiction part, but he told us it's faction. And so there's some of the kind of safe danger, enjoyable, that reader described that I always get from. I always go back to Fellowship, that kind of joy.
Oh yeah, well, and I guess with Fellowship of the Ring, you can get a lot of that joy, that safe danger, especially when it's really when you start going into realms of fantasy as well. But when it comes to this, that's always been the most oddly cozy thing about different types of conspiracy theories that have to do with where we're living right now. Like anytime somebody has a rapture date, or we're talking about the end of the world or an alien invasion or something really, really horrendous, I'm always like, really? Well, tell me more. I want to know. He's like, yeah, you're describing an apocalyptic situation or an Armageddon situation. That's certainly going to consume me as well. But for some reason, it just sounds so cozy to talk about something, the mechanics of the universe bearing down on us, and we actually being around to see something so significant. That's I don't know. I don't know what draws us in so much. But here's another one. Moira from New York City. Moira from New York City says, thanks so much for organizing this wonderful book club, Frank. Enjoying all the insights from Timothy, you, and the Frankleys. There are no accidents. We're discussing this book on the very auspicious Friday the 13th. Today is the feast of Our Lady of Fatima, when she first appeared to Lucia and her cousins in 1917. It is also the 41st anniversary of the failed assassination attempt of the Slavic Pope, St. John Paul II, in 1981. Recent happenings of Ukraine and Russia, globalist imminent power grabs through the WHO, the arrest of 90-year-old Cardinal Zen, to name a few, take on a different light while reading this book. Like Windswept House, symbolizes the importance of family and faith as foundation for our human journey, juxtaposed against unholy bedfellows of organized church and state. Wow. Wonderful. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that was going to be my opening salvo, but yours was so good I just scrapped it. It was happy feast day of Fatima. It's been now 105 years. The 100-year anniversary 5 years ago, I was like getting my family ready in a bomb shelter. I remember I was still teaching at the Catholic school, and I thought something was going to happen that day, you know. But yeah, that's right, the 41st anniversary of John Paul II's assassination. He was assassinated by the Marxist hired Muslim, not Sirhan. What's the guy's name? Ali Akbar. And the creepy thing is, Akbar said he knew that at court, this is on record at court, that that this had something to do with Fatima and the secret of Fatima, which hadn't been revealed yet. So it's very strange. And this happened, you know, two months after I was born. I'm 41. I was born in mid-March of 41. This assassination attempt of the Slavic Pope happened 2 months after I was born.
Wow.
It's all wild, man. It's all strange and fiction.
No, it is. That's why. I mean, there's been plenty of authors out there that have said that there's more truth in fiction than you think. And whether we're talking about historical fiction, when you bring things like this out, and you can actually refocus a person's lens, a perspective of what happened during a certain time period on Earth regarding a certain turn of events, or if you're just diving into fiction to learn a little bit about some eternal truths about humankind and the way that the heart works, the way that intuition and joy and anger and jealousy. I mean, fiction is wonderful, and I think that people like me, especially people like me, I've guilted myself out of reading fiction way too much over the last 10 years because I felt like I was wasting time. I should be reading biographies and history books, but then you have books like this and you're just like, I mean, here it is. This is just as much useful in understanding what's going on around us than anything else. And yeah, here's another one. Gardenia B says, in chapter 27, I enjoyed the Gib Appleyard's meeting with the Pope. And wait, did he meet with the Pope? Appleyard met with the Pope?
I haven't got
no.
Yeah, that she must be ahead. Wait.
No, we just ended it. We ended at chapter 30.
Yeah, was that 30?
Wait, what?
No, we ended it. Yeah, we did. Yeah, you're right.
Chapter
right.
27, he met with the Pope.
Wait, part 2. He meets with the Pope in the first chapter of part 2, Papal Twilight, which is 28, ain't it? No, that's not right.
How could I have missed that? No way. I mean, he met with a lot of prelates.
Yeah.
He didn't.
No, he didn't do that yet. Yeah, you're right. I think it's 30. We ended before 30, right?
Well, let me just read the rest of this. Let me see if I can get... I enjoyed Appleyard's meeting with the Pope, and on page 289, Gibb noted that the Slavic Pope saw all religions as true avenues to spiritual salvation, observing that the Pope was ahead of the One-Worlders, Bilderbergers, and New Agers in that regard. I have a similar universalist view of God's acceptance of all sincere seekers, so I conclude that perhaps Malachi Martin is emphasizing eminence of God versus humanism, the latter absent or denying divinity in creation. Malachi Martin is an exceptional author. I'm so glad that this is my first experience with his writing. P.S. The amount of organization, councils, official agencies is overwhelming. I guess this is the way to divide and conquer, and I now look at all such groups in our common world as a means of accomplishing more obfuscation and unholy agendas. To start with that point and work back, absolutely. This is why every time a new committee, subcommittee, an NGO, anything, any group gets involved that presents themselves as an authority on the subject, that this needs to be brought in under close consideration, and we have the experts and everything. That's just a way to compartmentalize themselves and separate themselves from any kind of public oversight, and to also demean and diminish anybody's confidence in believing that they actually have a legitimate role to play in the future of humanity. So yes, whether we're talking about this blinding number of committees and stuff that's going on just within the Vatican, that these prelates, these dark side prelates are using to actually diminish and destroy the church and take it to another direction. The same thing is done within governments. Hey, as Carlo Maria Vigano has said so much over the last couple of years in those wonderful open letters, to really stress that there is no difference between the forces of the deep state and the deep church. They are working in Congress with each other. They are trying to merge both operations, and it's been going on for quite a long time. I would love to see if he has ever had any conversation or thoughts on Malachi Martin.
Yeah, Frank, have I recommended to you either of the books, The Fourth Secret of Fatima or The Secret of Benedict XVI by another famed Vaticanist, not Marco Tussauds. Oh geez, what is his name? Have you looked this book up ever? The first, on the note of the lady's comment, the first 20 pages of the book, The Secret of Benedict XVI, about his retirement, which is claimed to be a forced retirement. Here, let me look this up as I talk. It goes into Obama and the Obama State Department's, what they knew, particularly the Podesta brothers, and the USCCB and the so-called Catholic Springtime. Do you remember this, when the Podestas were talking about the Catholic Spring?
I don't think so.
I need to send this to you.
Please
really
do.
important. It's really important to me in my work. But this author's name is called, for one thing, The Fourth Secret of Fatima is the thing that convinced me that the third secret of Fatima has not yet been revealed. It's Antonio Sochi, who also wrote the Secret of Benedict XVI. And the first 20 pages are on the Obama State Department and the Catholic Springtime that was partly revealed with the WikiLeaks. Podesta emailed to Hillary about the way they're going to further infiltrate some USCCB group, United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, a left-leaning group, as you've heard in this book. The national bishops' conferences, which have no magisterial authority, have been a major source of leftist creep in the church. But there are some Catholic Springtime American left bits of info that were leaked with WikiLeaks. That's really important. You need to look at some of these Sochi books.
I would love that. Yeah, thank you for that. Please send that over.
Yeah, I will.
That's something that I would love to expand on, and especially with somebody like Malachi Martin, who's been dead for some time now. It's hard to. That's a logical fallacy in itself to try to project what historical figures would have thought now, and who would have thought something about it, whatever. But it would be great to be able to just build up a little bit more of a library of information around all of this. So yeah, please send that over. And I have a little bit more over here on this. Summer 7/11 takes Slattery to Gladstone. We're in a war with Satan himself. 263, 264, pretty much all of the things that we had seen before, and the quotes I had gotten. Stark observation from Ceci, though, at the Vatican Bank, when she gets on the point of how all of these doodads, how electronic all the banking was, how the Internet of Things, the connectivity of things, and she went and she said, those black boxes and or this was the narrator, those black boxes and the Unisys A15 were exactly what she had said. Electronic doodads. Somebody had engineered them, programmed them, manipulated them. Quote, so, she spoke softly as to herself, or perhaps to her guardian angel, the devil is wired to the world at last. And that's back in, this is published in 96, but from what I've gathered, this is taking place around 1990, 1991. So she's looking at this electronic marriage between all things and the computers, and of course who's controlling the computers. And many times I have called these phones a portal in our palms. It's like the new witchcraft. So for her to look at all of this electronic banking really coming to the fore in the early 90s and to conclude that the devil has finally been wired to the world is it's incredible.
Wow.
So,
wow.
Well, that's all I have over here, and that's all we had in the thread. The chat room is popping off. Before I take whatever closing thoughts you have, Tim, on this session 4, I would like to say I looked at some of where we can go next. We are on page 321. It's the beginning of chapter 30, and I went ahead about 50 pages, not nowhere near 80 or 100, 50 pages to the beginning of chapter 34. It's page 321 to page 375. I think that's what we should do the next time around. So, a little bit of a lighter bite, especially since now we are finally in the second half of the book. So I want to keep people with us and not to have them fall too far behind. So I think 50 pages should be good. 30 to the end of 33. So your face, 375 in the paperback. All right, so that's what I have. Timothy, take it away. Any closing thoughts and anything like that?
I made the point before, and I just feel like the way I made it might have been under-emphatic. Whatever ends up happening with the Pope, the Slavic Pope, in this action, faction action, fact-fiction action, remember this, folks. Malachi Martin died 7 years before the end of the real Slavic Pope's pontificate. He didn't know what was going to happen with the forced end of the pontificate of the Slavic Pope. What strikes me every other chapter I read in this is the strangeness, as I just send you the Benedict XVI secret book, Frank, in private text. What strikes me as strange is so much of this happened, I'm sure, to JP2. That's what we call Slavic Pope, John Paul II. So much of it happened to JP2, but a lot of the rest of this stuff happened to Benedict XVI, and many people, I'm not necessarily one of them, but there's a strong enough case to be made for something called Beneplenism, or more simply, Benedict is still Pope, which is what that second Sochi book I sent you is about, Frank.
I'm buying it right now.
A lot of the, a lot of the stuff that you're talking about, that they're talking about as being directed in the action of this novel to John Paul II also seems to have happened to Benedict XVI, who I guess is a character in this book. But he was the presumptive candidate that all of these guys, the real life Oriatini and the real life St. Gallen Mafia, there are about 5 characters who are characterized that were actually in the St. Gallen Mafia. They started meeting in the year of the publication of this book, 1996. That's when the real St. Gallen Mafia started meeting, because they knew with Parkinson's disease that the Slavic Pope was ill. They thought he was going to die any day. He lasted until 2005. But they're like, look, his successor is going to do his exact bidding. You know, they're of one mind. And that is Ratzinger, who became Benedict XVI. So what ended up happening that Malachi Martin, our author, doesn't know is that the torch was passed to Ratzinger, who many good Catholics, my good friend Patrick Coffin, your Catholics out there, your Catholic fans will definitely know him. He's a good friend of mine. He's in this group. He thinks Benedict is actually still Pope. And so a lot of what they're planning here for the forced retirement of John Paul II is what the Beneplenists think happened to JP2 Part 2, Ratzinger. And that's really creepy to me.
Yeah, that they finally succeeded.
Yeah,
they finally succeeded, and now, and now, of course, we have Francis, and you know, and when you look at the mechanics of how this was done, it's so hard not to show how elections all over the world have been screwed one way or another. I don't know, man. It's to project into the future of this book, the timeline of this book. I wanted to do some projections, but I was just like, let's wait another session or so, because I don't know, like you just said, this is all laying out a plan of what was facing the Slavic Pope at the time of the publication. We know now, nearly 30 years later, what has become of the world, the church, the faith, the global, the geopolitical scenario. We know about all the climate. We're right in the middle of it. We are now of age to be those who are actually carrying the torch and talking about things that are going on and trying to bring attention to things that are most important. So wherever this book concludes, obviously we have all the information about what goes beyond it. I don't know what fiction is going to be the... Does he rely on fiction to end the book? Or is there a certain point, oh man, what's the revelation at the end? That's what I want to know. Because just to leave it off to what comes next, to be continued, would be very disappointing. Because we know what comes next, and you're rooting for these people to do something to stop this. Meanwhile, here we are 30 years later. It's, you know what it is like, Tim? It's like, I love the movie Braveheart. I can watch Braveheart all the time, and I still feel pumped. I'm like, yes, I'm rooting for the Scottish. Then again, here we are, and look how has Scotland really taken itself out from under the yoke of the UK, and they vote to stay with them now. It's just it kind of dulls it a little bit when I watch Braveheart. I was like, man, I wish Scotland was still the same.
Yeah, it's almost like watching. I like your analogies a lot more noble-hearted, noble-spirited, but it's almost like watching in a less noble way. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, you know, it's like I rewatched that movie because I think it's really well made, and it's like this is a much cheerier ending than the real way that this went down. And I'm a Gordon, and we were very close. Gordon was a very close confidant, the House of Gordon, to Robert the Bruce, who eventually kind of temporarily overthrew the Brits. But like you said, we have all the luxury of history. We know how that turned out. Same thing here is a great analogy, Frank, because we know, man, stuff took a turn that Malachi Martin wouldn't see because he died or was killed at the end of the 90s there, and he thought he was going to outlast Parkinson's riddled JP2. Life is strange, funny old life. JP2 outlasted him, and then what was maybe planned for JP2, some Catholics think, I'm not convinced, might have happened to Ratzinger. So the last 25 years are kind of the sequel almost wrote itself, and that's what I'm channeling into my read of what happened 25 years before that.
Yeah.
So it's really weird, but spooky. You know,
it's too bad that that Malachi Martin was not only alive but 40 years younger, so that he can continue to put this all out there. But then again, if he weren't born in like 1925, then he wouldn't have been in the premier spaces, the premier places, and serving at the hand of some really significant figures to see and to have heard what he had heard, and to be able to witness and bear witness to this stuff in his writing. So I guess it's just really up to us to continue to take what was left behind and to apply it to whatever analysis we have today. And I'm looking forward to the next 50 pages. I really am. Tim, thank you again. Everybody, TimothyJGordon.com. Thanks again for hanging out with me, man. And I'm looking forward to the next go-around.
Thanks, Frank. Thanks for having me. You're a fun dude to hang out with. I'm going to send you a documentary that'll blow your mind. I'm surprised I've never done. But anyway, I'm always sending you stuff, and you're always good about looking at it. But it's a Fatima thing, and it has much to do with Martin. So wonderful. God bless you, man. And everyone pray for me if you would. My wife has the C-section this time of the day next Friday, so wow. I will probably miss session 5, but I'm going to do the reading.
Oh, absolutely. Listen, you do what you got to do. This is child number 7, right?
Yes, sir.
Wow.
Child number 7.
My gosh, that's just wonderful. Congratulations to you guys. All the blessings in the world to you guys, and be well. Let me know if there's anything we can do from all the way over here in New York.
Will do, Frank. God bless you, man.
All right. Enjoy your weekend there. All the best.
You too, brother.
Bye.
Peace. All
right. Timothy Gordon, you guys at home. We did a little bit more than an hour. I'm having a good time. It's 10 o'clock now. I have to go home as well. I have a wife who's not pregnant that still needs to be tickled. I'm going to tickle her until she becomes nauseous. So, thank you all so much for hanging out. I think I should release all these as a I don't know. I put them on YouTube eventually. I should put all of these, upload them in a series onto YouTube so people can read it or watch it and jump onto the other ones. I just didn't want to do this live on YouTube or anywhere else. Quite frankly, .tv elsewhere, on DLive, just so that there's one other option there for people. And I thank you so much for the time. Keep commenting on the threads. Comment on other people's things. Talk to each other. It's about interacting among the entire group. So I'll see you on Monday. Enjoy your weekends. Nighty-night.